in our discussion today, we're going to be talking about creating a culture of continuous learning and development. I think in the previous weeks, there have been a lot of insightful engagements through this platform, and today is going to be one of them. So, Phyllis, you are welcome to our session today on creating a culture of continuous learning and development. I think some years back, HR department did not even have specialized rules for L&D some years back in a part of the world. Later on, businesses saw the need to create that rule specifically to manage L&D. And so beginning with our conversation, we'll start with that. But before that, Phyllis, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Who is Phyllis? Our participants here are connected and they are watching you. They want to know who is Phyllis. So please go ahead and introduce yourself and then we can begin this discussion.
So, 𝐀𝐄𝐄, thank you very much for having me. And good afternoon to all your viewers and listeners. I would want to say I'm very, very privileged to be here once again. And thank you to all your crew members, especially to Patricia for her consistency in bringing to us almost every week on week very insightful learning programs to help us also better our lives. So like you rightly said, my name is Phyllis 𝐀𝐝𝐦𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐨. I'm L&D professional, and I've been in this profession for more than a decade. And wherever you mention training, I love to train. And so when I had the call again to join, I didn't hesitate at all. I just said, why not? Whatever you've learned over the years, it is also great when you get the opportunity to also share with other people. And so, hey, I'm happy to be here, and that will be briefly about me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phyllis, for accepting our invitation once again. So just like I rightly asked, let's start with where this whole L&D thing is coming from. How do we begin the process?
So thank you, 𝐀𝐄𝐄, for the question. Like you started from the beginning, the focus on learning and development, i.e. L&D, comes from the background that says that organizations need to adapt to a rapidly changing world. As industries evolve, new technologies emerge, market dynamics shift, and therefore it becomes necessary for organizations to equip their employees. Take our Labor Act 2003, Section 9, talks about the duties of an employer to develop the human resources by way of training and retraining the workers. And so how do you begin the process? It begins by assessing current skills, identifying future needs, and then designing programs to bridge those gaps. And so these are key areas for which it becomes very necessary for every organization to set aside some budgets or some plans to ensure that you develop your workforce who are also working towards achieving your set objectives. Yes, 𝐀𝐄𝐄.
All right, Phyllis. So, yeah, so Phyllis tells us that this whole thing also stems from the fact that the people in Korea to offer training programs for the individual employee. All right, so Phyllis, let's move on into these quite expensive, especially if your business has a number of branches, and sometimes you have to move the people from different places into a particular training facility or even to it's very expensive. How do we sustain L&D, these training activities, development activities, and why then they have to invest into training this task?
So while you're right, I mean, while L&D activities can be costly, they are very essential for organizational growth, if you agree with me. You cannot have an engaged workforce without having intentional learning and development interventions in place. It can't really be possible. And so as people progress through their career journey, they crave development. And we as HR professionals must support the business to make it happen if we want to retain talent. L&D activities, as you rightly said, may be costly, but it could be sustained by adopting the 70-20-10 rule, which most organizations are going by, more structuring learning and development interventions within organizations. So the rule suggests that when you take the 70, it suggests that 70% of your learning should occur through on-the-job experiences such as challenging assignments, projects, and day-to-day tasks. So on a daily basis, when you are assigning tasks to people, you must deliberately be sure, and then your supervisors and leaders must be deliberate about it, using it as a form of learning and development, especially when you don't have budget in place. So that is one key area. Then the 20% of it, according to this rule, suggests that 20% of your learning should come from interactions with others, such as coaching. You can look at mentoring, feedback, and collaboration with colleagues. You agree with me that in the organization, we have different levels and accountabilities. You have the entry level, you have the middle level, and then senior management level. So if you have people come in the organizations and then you will develop these people into management or senior management level, then you can obviously leverage on these experiences, talents that you have within the organization to serve as a learning opportunity for other people to also leap on. If you do that and you do it effectively, then you don't have to even spend so much on cost. It's all about processes putting in place and making sure that people adhere to, and that can be very, very less, or if not at all, no cost involved at all. Then the 10% of it, which most of organizations, most of us focus on, and for that matter, we think L&D activities are costly, is the fact that the 10% should be formal through structured training programs. So if you take the 100%, only 10% of it, according to this rule, must happen in classroom. And that one you can look at, let's say you are buying new equipment. There's no way you can avoid buying that equipment. But if you buy the equipment, you must provide an opportunity for people to learn. And that learning can only happen in person, where you have the expert trainer to come in to train. Or maybe new systems are being changed and every employee would have to go through it. Softwares have been bought and we have to learn it. In that case, you must send people through the classroom, either through the workshop, for them to learn to become competent to operate those equipment. So these are the areas that you can use in training people. Of course, the interventions that you can adopt in training people. So if you look at it, it's just 10% out of it. But we all forget, or most of us or organizations forget about the 90%, which lies within our means. We forget about it and we just dwell on the 10%. So by this, even if you don't have the resources, you can still have a means by training your people. Again, using experienced employees or subject matter experts within the organization to train less experienced ones can bring you much more benefit, as they get to have hands-on training that they can use immediately on the job. If you ask me, if I have worked in a role for, let's say, 5-10 years, I am the best person to train a new entrant than bringing in an expert consultant to come and then train on based on theory or research. So if only L&D professionals can focus on some of these areas, we can really, really support the business to train people without even budget in place in your learning interventions. And I'm sure as we go through, we'll touch on some of those.
We'll touch on some of these things. That's very true, because then even in terms of just like you rightly said, train the trainer programs. And so individuals have been trained, they have certain level of exposure over the years, and then they can transfer the same knowledge to their team members without necessarily organizing or putting them in a formal classroom setting to have these training programs. And oftentimes, when business owners hear about training, even sometimes they don't even look at the training calendar in perspective. Just the thought that there is going to be this a year sometimes puts them off. But with what you have said, I think that if they would even take a look at what is in there, because the training calendar would also propose the mode of training. And like you rightly said, some will be in-house and all of that. And 90% can be in-house, and then just 10% focus on external training programs. And that's very key. So if you are watching us here, you are an employer, you are thinking of the cost that comes with L&D, and you go like, why should we even invest so much into it? There are other avenues to cut down on costs. Now, the bit about L&D is so important. I was listening to a speaker in that discussion. The CEO had said that what if we train people and then they leave, and then the HR person intervenes and say that what if we don't train them and they are still around? They will cause a lot of mess. So training activities are so important, and we've really got to invest in it and look at ways in which we can and to cut down on costs and still come up with a lot of training activities for our people. Moving on, we are going to look at some of the common barriers to creating overcome. In our earlier discussion, we spoke about the financial bit. Phyllis, if you can talk to us about other barriers that comes across when we are talking about creating a culture of continuous learning, and how do we overcome these barriers or challenges?
So some of the common barriers that come to mind include, when it comes to every training intervention or whatever programs you want to implement in an organization, resistance to change is the number one that I can talk of. Lack of time and fear of failure. Usually people resist change not because they don't want to adapt to new settings, but sometimes for the lack of understanding and the benefit of the program that is being rolled out. And so as HR or as learning professionals, it is our responsibility to ensure that when there has to be a rollout of new program, maybe a software being bought, equipment, and you have to change from the old way of doing things. Because sometimes when you become comfortable with a particular way of doing things and you have to change, if you get the opportunity, you resist. But because in an organization, you're an employee and hey, you don't have that choice, you conform. But in conforming, sometimes you can really struggle to get people to go through. And even if you organize the training, sometimes they drag it. And so what can you do to ensure that you overcome this? Usually you have to make sure that you communicate effectively. You know, when people understand the need for the change and they know the benefits for why they have to go through that particular change, they will definitely adhere to it and then they will conform. But where they don't understand, you just wake up one day, you put people into training, and then they have to just go through it without understanding the benefits. Sometimes I would experience when people go through training, they don't even know the objective. Why are you sending me on such a program? If they don't understand, they also struggle to learn, and you won't get the results. Your money will go waste.
Some people do take training programs as well.
People
Avenue to go and
understand.
rest.
people need to understand why they are being sent on a particular program. Even though you plan, sometimes you have some organizations, they have the budget in place. They will give you everything you need to be able to roll out your interventions. But even when you bring in the trainers and it's readily available for people to attend, getting the attendance accurate is also an issue. And it's not as if you haven't communicated, you haven't aligned with the department. So sometimes people juggle. So they think that, especially when it comes to operations, they think that, oh, we don't have time, we don't have time. Meanwhile, it's the same people who are requesting for the training. So it is also another area that becomes a challenge. And so for me, how do you overcome this particular challenge? You need to align very well with leadership. Now, I always say that when people are setting their objectives from the beginning of the year, you make sure that as part of their KPIs, they have in it there as a objective to develop their direct report. Whatever does not get measured will not be done. So when the leader or the supervisor or the manager knows that you are going to measure them by 31st of December, he will definitely make time and ensure that they will even chase you, the L&D unit, to make sure that their people are being trained. Because he knows that if you don't train them, he is going to be accounted. He is going to account for that. So definitely, you need to make sure that you couch it in there, their objective, and make sure that you monitor. And then also, lack of, or I would say fear of failure. Sometimes, and I have witnessed, we send people for training and they almost don't want to go for it because one, they need to be assessed. At the end of the day, we pay so huge sums of amounts for people to attend training. And let's say you are for a particular training, it's about $10,000 for you alone. And we fly you out of the country to go and learn, and then you come back with that certification. And getting that certification, probably a contract that we are working on, since you are certified, then we can confidently, go with the crew and then deliver that intervention. If you don't pass, then it means that it's a big problem. So sometimes people dread it. But when you allow people to know that, look, if you fail, it doesn't mean that that's the end of learn out of that. And of course, also assess the right people to attend the right training programs. Maybe it's an opportunity. You just see this person as maybe my favorite. Oh, I think you can do it better. Without assessing them, they go for the training, they trail, they come back, and then we say all sort of manner of things to them, and it doesn't really encourage learning. So these are some of the ways that people really dread having to be developed because of the outcome. But if we have the support, if we create a learning environment which is safer for them to be able to learn, and we integrate learning in our daily workflows, I believe that it can help really to support employees to learn effectively and efficiently.
But there are instances where people have even attended, they were nominated for training programs, but they saw the training programs as a relaxation point. So even to have a proper understanding of why they are going for the whole training and all of that is not there. I'm going to relax. It's fun for me. Some people see it as it's a time off for me. It's a time to chill and all of that. But the purpose must be clear. And then the bit about lack of time, very true. There are people, I think I have made observation with regards to the sales team, especially where they have targets and the target is pulling them everywhere. When you call for training programs, it becomes a challenge. But someone said, technical training programs would not teach you necessarily about how to relate with other people. It's the soft skills. Training programs about how to relate with people, emotional intelligence, all of these training programs, leading self and all of that would help you to relate better with people. But sometimes when you call for these training programs, they don't even see the need one. And then their targets are pulling them in, wherever they have to be. And so they don't want to be part of the program. But I think that having said all of these, our participants have heard us and moving on, they can make adjustments. If you're also a business owner here, these things can be. Does technology play in facilitating facilitating continuous learning and development. Now, Phyllis, you recall that during COVID, companies that were resorting to traditional ways of training, only classroom training, training, it became a challenge for them during the period. No training programs were happening. Tell us what role technology plays in L&D.
I mean, just as you rightly said, during COVID, it really tested all of us proficiency. It tested our skills, our readiness, and everything you can think of. Most of the training programs that I had to travel out of Ghana to deliver, I was forced to do it online during COVID because the business is not waiting. The client is not waiting for you because it's COVID. I mean, if other organizations are doing it, you had to do it as well. And that is where you have virtual training programs becoming more popular these days. And I'm sure a lot of people have attended such programs. Technology really enables continuous learning and also provide access to online courses. So, for instance, AI-driven, personalized, learning path and virtual classrooms are all areas that today we cannot really take out of our learning interventions. Platforms like LinkedIn Learning, EdCast, Coursera, it offers thousands of courses for skills development. So most organizations now, what they do is that, of course, you assess which one is relevant or beneficial to your audience, and then you adopt. And I would say that you need to work in consultation with your IT department, look at your finances, and look at the system that you can afford, and then you go by it. By so doing, you are not just providing training, the traditional training which happens in-house or in person, but then you can have some online where other people, especially the previous one we talked about, lack of the barriers, lack of time and all of that. You can have bite-sized learning programs that people can, engage with at their own pace and still having themselves developed. So technology now plays a key role in our learning interventions, and we cannot afford to do without it. You just need to
Not
identify
at
which
all.
one is suitable for you and then you go with it. I was discussing with someone and it was the same thing. I mean, these days you can't have everybody attend the program, and how do you go about it? And I was saying that, I mean, a lot of organizations use Microsoft Teams, right? So if you are using
Yeah.
Microsoft Teams, there's an aspect of Stream that is a collaborative platform that you can use, go in there, record some sort of like you take your SOPs, for instance. You want people to be able to learn, but ordinarily nobody can go and pick the documents and then sit there and learn. They have other things to do. So if you work with your L&D units, you can have them record them in bite size. If you have, let's say, 10 modules, you can pick one module per module, and then you record it, and then it is online. You give access to those who are
Absolutely.
required to have access to it. And then you give them a time frame, say from January to June. By June, you should be able to have completed all of these modules. And it becomes very interesting. In a meeting, you start commending people who are actually engaging with the content, and it becomes like a challenge. It becomes something fun. So people are learning, but they are having fun at the same time. And if you can, I mean, you can write them some citation. Those at the end of the day,
Yeah.
who becomes the top. It's very
Absolutely.
interesting. Most of these online platforms have leaderboards
Yeah.
where, as
Yeah.
we engage with the learning, it shows you who is at the top, who is the next in line, and all of that. So if I go there and I see, oh, 𝐀𝐝𝐦𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐸 is the one topping, no, I will have to make sure I beat him. Then it means that I'm learning. And by learning, I'm getting more points and I'm getting the badges.
Absolutely.
And when you get the
Yeah.
badge, you send it to the team. And so everybody say, oh, you can get to a point where you realize that you are the only one in the team who is not learning. So if that's the case, you are challenged. So it
Yeah.
really encourages some fun way of learning. And then the organization also benefits, areas where we can adapt to. It will be very, very interesting for your millennials and your Gen Zs, for our baby boomers. Yes, some of them, they can be receptive to it. Some may also not really like it so much. It doesn't mean you should get them out. So that is where you also find other suitable interventions for them to also engage in. And I'm sure you can cover everyone. So yes, technology is very, very key, and we must find a suitable one that is useful for us to also engage with.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Phyllis has said that work with your ICT department, because oftentimes there are many interventions they could help you come up with if you really let them know what you want. And with Microsoft 365, some of these things can easily be done, like she said, where the videos of yourself or whoever the facilitator is recorded, is cut into smaller pieces, and then some of these things can be done. I remember in one of the places that I worked as an L&D professional, among the group, I had worked with the ICT department, and we came up with a platform for some of these things. So videos were recorded and uploaded there. On quarterly basis, programs were assigned to individual employees, and it became fun because every quarter, at the end of the quarter, some analytics were done and shared with all employees that scored 100 over 100, and it was fun. Even the subsidiaries, it became like a competition among the subsidiaries, and every subsidiary wanted to come up top, So there are ways you can do these things, just like she said, and it can be very, very interesting. So what strategies can the HR department implement to support?
So strategies,
I think we've mentioned some of them.
Yes. So I'll say that HR can support continuous learning by promoting learning culture. That is what we are talking about now, right? So offer mentoring programs. Most organizations offer mentorship programs. So HR can be intentional about offering mentorship programs, skills transfer programs, organizing workshops and seminars. Also providing resources that is needed for skills development. So for example, for your mentorship programs, you can pair identified mentees with well-experienced subject matter experts within the business, depending on what you want the outcome to be. So for example, maybe you want to develop them into future leaders, so leadership development. If that is the focus, then you know who exactly to pair them with. You don't go and pair someone in HR with someone in finance. Obviously, you need to discuss it very well and know the relevant mentors that you need to pair with. And then also, if you're looking at skills transfer interventions, it can also, you can focus on transferring knowledge from experienced employees who are nearing retirement. This thing about experienced employees who are near retirement, sometimes maybe you can look at it within the next 10 years, you have your key employees who will be going on retirement, or maybe within the next 5 years or even 3 years. So as an organization, what are we doing to ensure that these experienced people don't leave the business with all the institution memory they have, but then they will be able to transfer it? Usually they will transfer knowledge, without a proper plan. So on a daily basis, when they are assigning tasks, they do that, they groom them and all of that. But this time around, we want to structure it whereby you have identified one who you know that their skills are very critical. And so for that matter, you need to also find people within the team that they can transfer this knowledge to, and you can monitor over a period. That way, you are not losing your well-experienced employees through retirement. But as they leave, you have these younger ones also coming up, and not just coming to occupy the role, but also they will be able to retain some of the knowledge that these experienced people, again, it can help us to also have a strong talent pipeline. So you don't want to just train for the sake of it, but your training interventions must target your succession plan so that you have a strong team, like a football team. The 11 on the field, you have a strong team on the bench. Those on the bench must be equally strong as those playing, so that once they leave and once anything, unforeseen issues come up, it could be resignation, it could be anything at all, then your business doesn't come to a halt. So it is also very critical that we look at that area. And then in terms of workshops and seminars, you can organize monthly and quarterly seminars in person or online, and then invite resource persons to engage your teams and give them the opportunity to expand their horizon. Why do I say that? Sometimes when you bring external people in to interact with your teams, they are able to give them other perspective from different organizations. Especially when you have this consultant, they have engaged with other organizations, even if it's the same industry, they might have engaged with other sister organizations, and they know the common issues that runs through. And so through these webinars, they will be able to share some very insightful nuggets that your team comfortable with what they know already, but they can broaden their perspective, and that can also spark that learning, interest within your team. So while at it, you also provide the needed resources by leveraging leadership support to promote your learning interventions. Without leadership support, you can have a very beautiful plan, but trust me, it will just be on paper. It can never see the light of day. And so you make sure that once you're having your plan, and this happens from the beginning of the year, you have your objectives, and out of the operational, technical areas, whatever they are working on, as the people side, from HR, you've looked at it, what you can also support them from. And you don't just support by sitting in your office and then design the programs, but you need to work with the department. So what do you think I can do to help you? Which area? And that is why our learning interventions must not be supply driven, or those trainings because of the target they need to achieve per the year. Absolutely. If you do it this way, there's no way you even run a training program and you struggle for people to come, because in the first place, they are the ones requesting for it. And so when you have been able to put it together, readily available, they'll come, and then you have also the piece to run your units and your learning interventions very effectively.
Absolutely. Please, let's go into other areas where the organization can also add L&D activities into performance management and make it a scoring or give it a particular weighting as an intervention to help promote learning and development. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So, good question. So, at the beginning of setting the objective, every employee must have individual development plans. And from the beginning, I said that having training employees is not an option, it's an obligation. And you also don't want to train people because of their aspirations. This is how I feel, the path I feel I want to be on is towards organizational needs. And so when you are setting your objective, you must have development plans. And this development plan, I always say that your development plan or your development is in your hands. You need to drive your development. And then your manager also has a responsibility. Your manager also has a responsibility to ensure that you are developed. So these two people, and of course, everyone is an employee before they are managers. So you as an individual, you are responsible for your development. And then the one supervising you is also responsible to ensuring that you are actually being accountable for your own development. Once you have your manager having this part of his KPI or her KPI, and you also having it as part of your development to ensure that you have developed in one or two areas within the year being assessed, you can trust me that you will have a successful program in place. And that means you would even have to chase. And sometimes you have people coming to you. So what training programs do we have? And like I said, let people not look at training as the 10% that happens in classroom. So if your manager has designed a plan that, look, every month I'm going to meet you twice in a month, and I'm going to take you through these areas. So there are broad area of competencies that I have identified. Maybe I have identified 5 areas of competencies that you are lacking, and I want to take you through. And for us to be able to do it throughout the year, every month we're going to spend or set aside, let's say, 3 hours or 5 hours or 1 hour to ensure that we go through this. And once we do that, I give you feedback so that if anything happens in terms of non-performance and everything, you must have a document that proves that indeed you gave the employee an opportunity, you went through formal feedback or learning feedback, and out of that is why this is coming out. If you don't have that formal conversation, if you don't have performance conversation, and you just work on a daily basis throughout the year, then you are not really helping yourself and your team. So I think these are some of the critical areas that we can adapt as L&D professionals to ensure that everyone is accountable for their learning.
All right, thank you so much, Phyllis. So, our listeners, if you have any question, you can put it in the chat box. We are going to read them, and then we'll see how we can respond to them within the time frame that we have. Let's take a commercial break. Let's take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue with our questioning. But for now, put your question in the chat box so that when we come back, we can read your questions and then Phyllis can help us to respond to them. We'll be back shortly. All right, welcome back from the break. Let's go on with a few more questions. Maybe we'll take one more question and then we'll come back to what our listeners are saying. Now, how do you ensure that learning opportunities are accessible to all employees? I think in your submission, you had mentioned something around where some employees feel that the process is not very fair and all of that. So, how do we ensure that learning opportunities are accessible to all employees, regardless of their role or level within the organization? Everybody feels I'm being trained. There is some sort of L&D activities for me to help with my growth.
Yeah, this question, 𝐀𝐄𝐄, it always comes up. I don't know whether you've had an opportunity to, having employees badge you with this same question. So usually when you take
Yes,
most
especially if it involves
organizations,
traveling outside.
yes. I mean, I went for a training program, and it became almost like an hour where we were actually arguing about the fact that Some managers don't allow them to go for training programs, and they don't allow them for. And I was like, why would any manager restrict you from attending training programs? And it wasn't the usual. So outside traveling, and I was just thinking that, oh, it's an in-house program and all of that. So yes, you're right. Usually the interventions is towards meeting a specific target within the year. And so if you don't deliberately plan for everyone and put in certain measures, it will not cover everyone year on year, because not everybody will be using the same equipment. Not everyone will be attending the webinars and all of that. So you end up having the same people attending the training almost every time. And so how do you make it accessible to all? To ensure accessibility, I would advise that you offer diverse learning formats. For example, having online, I've mentioned it earlier, in person, where necessary, micro learning or bite-sized learning, provide support for different learning styles, and offer financial assistance for training programs. So you have people who are working from home. How do they attend your training programs? If all your programs are in-house or in person, how do they attend this training program? So that is why we have to start looking technology. We have to start looking online. And some of them are not really expensive at all. Like I said, you have to contact your IT department, and where you think, in fact, even the less of it you still cannot afford. If you are using Microsoft Teams, you can find ways to still put in some training programs. If you take, some people are working in the organization for more than 2, 3, 4 years. If you ask them about the standard operating procedures they are using, they don't even know. That is a learning area. Okay, some of the policies that we need to train people, socialize with people, some people don't even know that. So you can use
even
those
company
forms.
values, mission values.
Exactly. So you can use those platforms to share knowledge so that people can then, at their own pace, want it to look like that is there forever. People can just wait at any time in 2 years before they do it. You give them a timeline. So make sure you complete this program within 6 months, within the year. From January, by 31st December, you must complete this training, and it's at their own pace. So those are some of the things that you can put in place. So like I said, Microsoft Teams provides a function for you to create groups or communities for like-minded people. And it can also encourage teams to adapt to using some of these platforms and other collaborative platforms where you can also, let's say, every week or bi-weekly, you have people go on there to share information. It is also a very great platform to use. And once you do this, I believe that you can capture everyone. And it's not even if you're not using Microsoft Teams or whatever, you can use your team meetings, your natural team meetings that you run, whether it's a monthly team meeting or is a bi-weekly team meeting. You can use that one. And this month, this is what we will touch on. Part of development, if you want to help people to develop their presentation skills, if it's a monthly report, don't be the one to present the report as the manager. Allow one of your direct reports to do that. And by so doing, you would have coached him or her to come and stand there and do the presentation. So that can help you to solve a need for you to train them formally as in presentation skills. Okay, you might not be able to cover everyone in a single session, but if you plan it throughout the year, everyone can have their turn and they can do that. Even in your absence, you allow them to do that, and by that you are boosting them their confidence to also do this before other management leaders when you are not available. So we can think of all these creative areas to really ensure that everyone receives some kind of training. And again, the final one I'll add is when you have your one-on-one session, your coaching session, performance feedback. When the person enters your office and you are discussing performance with the person, you are giving performance feedback. What you can also talk about is what did they do right? What are they doing right? You don't wait till mid-year where you have to formally review their performance before you give feedback. So every month we
Yes.
have something we call performance review meeting. So it can be once every month, it could be second. Look at the time that is suitable for you and make sure that you apportion all the time for all your team members and meet them and give them constructive feedback. Once you do that, we talked about last month, I don't want to come back into the meeting and then he talking about the same thing. So you will find ways and means to direct the self-learning that we are talking about. Because mind you, his or her performance is driven by himself. And so once you do that and you activate that channel, you also spark that learning culture within people to find ways to learn by themselves.
All right, Phyllis, thank you. So I think one of the things I picked from your conversation is that everyone can be trained actually. I mean, all employees can be trained. Training can be accessible to all. Again, employees not feel that until you have sat in the classroom, the formal classroom for a formal training program, until that happens, you have not undergone some sort of training. Just like Phyllis said, as a department head, you could even organize, you could use your monthly review meetings as a means to help your team members on presentations. So there are so many avenues we can use basically to level to help everybody be trained within the business. And they shouldn't feel, I've been in the business for 5 years, I've been here for 4 years, I've not attended one single training program. You know, you hear that sometimes, but there are many avenues you can actually use to get your people trained. And Phyllis has mentioned in that justice to all of that. All right, Phyllis. So I have a question here. Training effectiveness. So you are an employer, you have invested so much into training, but how do you measure the effectiveness of those training and development initiatives so that it doesn't look like you have just invested your money into something? I'm not seeing the results. How can you prove the effectiveness of L&D activities to your business?
Effective employee engagement, skills proficiency, impact on key performance indicators, which we call the KPIs, surveys. Surveys. These processes provide valuable insights. Kirkpatrick's evaluation model also becomes a crucial, system that you can use in evaluating training effectiveness, where you are measuring the reaction right to it, and then right after sharing this happy sheet for people to sign on whether they're happy and all of that. That can also be very useful. Measuring learning. Did learning actually occurred? And that you can derive that from your assessment that you give them at the end of the day, how they are scoring each of the objectives. And I'm sure that's what the question is focusing on. So how do you ensure that behavior actually change after the training? When it comes to soft skills training programs, it's very difficult for you to assess the behavior. So let's say you have this receptionist who is always not smiling, who is always moody and all of that. Sometimes they are not engaged as maybe as a manager, proper constructive feedback. They feel that they've been hired. They're just seated there, greeting people, taking their salary, and then nothing happens to them. They organize the training, they organize the resources, the food, everything, and people attend training. When the people have attended training, and all of that. And now you see a whole new change. The person is now receptive, is lively, all bubbly, and all of that. You can tell that behavior has changed. But of course, it is 3 months or even training is effective. That's there's no ambiguity about that. Immediately the training is done and they can actually use the software for which you have trained them on. You can tell that the training was effective. It is the soft skills that becomes a challenge. You never give feedback. Sometimes we do this 360 performance appraisal, and anytime the team members are appraising him down, he's not effective, he's not managing as well. And after you taking him through some leadership development intervention, and then subsequently the appraisal is becoming positive. The same people who used to appraise him, oh, he doesn't communicate effectively, he doesn't do this, and now it's becoming positive. It can tell you that the program you took that particular manager or leader through is yielding results. So it's all about monitoring. You monitor right after the training, immediately after the training, then you can tell that the training is being effective. But when you take soft skills training, like let's say time management or supervisory skills, over time, you have to do a refresher, because as we evolve, as we go along, then sometimes we become complacent. So we just have to refresh people so that they are able to stay current and through to the standards that they've gone through. I hope that answers.
Absolutely, it does. It does. It is also worth noting that, for as an L&D professional, or even you are in the HR department, you are playing a journalist role, and L&D is part of your focus. These activities, you really have to fall on the department heads to do these things. It's not something that you are going to carry on your head. If you are operating a business that is so big, you can't be moving from one place to the next, observing behavior. You always have to rely mostly on the department head for their feedback, and they must be made to be responsible, because organizing a training program based on your training calendar and all of those kind of things, you'd have gathered training needs from the department, and so the department heads must be made responsible to a training program, and you are to submit your training reports. Your submission goes to your department head, and then HR receives a copy of the training report, so that the department head will see to all the within a specific timeline. Then it doesn't become the responsibility of the department head to see to it, like she said, monitoring, to see to it that those activities that are being done, all of that. If not, then measuring training effectiveness become a problem. Because sometimes the department head could push this whole activity to the HR department and tell them that you are the one who is in charge of L&D, or you are in charge of people training. So tell us about the effectiveness of it. But you have to rely on the department, and you have to commit them to do it. That's very, very important.
So Kwajo, on that, I would want to say that
yes.
I would want to say that, sometimes these are your typical HR interventions, but it sits with the line manager. So yes,
Yeah.
training, but rightly, if you work hand in hand with the line manager and he's involved, definitely the buy-in, you get some results. And again, before you send the employee on that program, the employee needs to understand why he's being sent on the program. if I didn't plan, it's not it has become necessary for me to shift from my original plan interventions for this. So giving proper context as to the purpose, the reason why the training has become necessary, and what the outcome is, what you are expecting from the training when I come back. So that, like you said, your report is going to your manager. If you throw me into a training program, is because sometimes, and I've dealt with some organizations, at the end of the day, look, we have budget to spend. Come and train, come and do this. Not any proper interventions that have been put in place. So you send people, sometimes you walk into the training and you look at people's faces and it's like they don't want to be here. And when you get closer and you interact, somebody came for maternity leave and immediately she got there, they've asked him to ask her to go for training. So throughout the training, she's sitting there, she's angry, she's blocked her mind. And so such a person, you can't tell me that when he comes back, she's coming to really perform anything. So if you are planning very well, the manager, the learner, and who is going to train, that is why if it's an internal trainer, the assessment and everything is done collaboratively so that we all know what we are expecting. So that at the end of the day, if I'm assessing you, the trainer, then we all know we are on the same level, right? If not, you just throw money away. You go to management for budgets for training and they won't give it to you because they don't see any outcome from our interventions. But if we really involve them, I believe that we can get the support that we need to also roll out our interventions.
Absolutely. All right. So wrapping up, Phyllis, quickly run us through. You have taken on a role as an HR person, is a specialist role. And you think you said all of this, but step by step, you start from this to that, you do this, you do that, you do that, so that we come to a close with our discussion.
So can you clarify again the question again?
Yes, I was saying that having gone through all of this discussion, we are wrapping up. I want you to highlight the steps. So you've joined a department as an L&D professional or as an HR person, and that is part of your portfolio. How do you begin? So from the beginning, you do this, that to the end.
Okay.
I know it's a cycle.
So,
you keep doing it every year, but how do you begin?
Okay. So first of all, when you have been hired as an L&D professional and you join the business, if you're lucky, there are some organizations that they do have all the processes in place. So you just go in there and you facilitate. Other or most of the time, there's nothing there. So you're starting from scratch. Now, what is the ideal way of you to start from the right foot? First of all, you need to know what is in place. What are the plans in place? You need to check. So definitely as L&D units, you deal with templates, a lot of templates. Do you have the templates available? How do you track training programs? How do you register people? Do they have a budget? If they don't have a budget, what is the objective? How does the organization want to see the training unit? So there's a plan. For an organization I've worked with, the plan is just to develop the operation side. Okay, so that is where the focus on where you have the subscriptions. So we want to make sure that everyone working within operations has some sort of qualified certification, and that is what we want to look at. We want to make sure that people are certified within the industry, and so that is the focus. Apart from that, soft skills, if you add a few, we are okay, and we want most of our training programs to have that. So if that is what is in place, then you need to make sure that you are consolidating all of these training interventions at one source. The reason I'm saying is that, yes, the budget for the department sits with them, but to be able to run it effectively as a unit, you must have all of it under the L&D umbrella so that you can effectively go about the the day-to-day activities of it. So for, let's say, at the end of the year, by 31st December, when appraisals are being done, you are looking at training intervention. So you are putting your training programs together. First of all, you need to find out how many departments do you have. Let's say you have 5 departments. What are they going to work towards for the ensuing year? And if you know that, where are the gaps that they have identified within the unit that for that matter they want to focus unit, and based on this, you have them of definitely you have to design the budget, the template for them to outline their training programs that they want to cover within the year. And if you can look out for the available costs that is associated with these training programs, you can provide, let's say, estimated budget for it. And then so you have all the 5 departments having, and the template is going to be developed by you. So you developed it, you can have a simple Excel spreadsheet and then have that developed. You share it with them. They collate all of that and then they share it with you. You can now confirm with the institutions based on the amount that has been allocated. If you get it right, then you can have the actual figure that this department is expected to spend on. So if you, let's say you have $5,000, $5,000, $3,000, you consolidate all of that is what is the whole entire budget for the year presented to management. And you present to management through whoever is in the organization that you are reporting to. So the head of department for HR obviously will be his call. And then you look at this and then you go through it and you go and defend for that budget. Mind you, whatever is there, you must be able to defend the reason why you are putting those interventions. And so it's not a matter of they are populating for you. These are the trainings we want to. You must be able to ask questions. Why this training? What is this going to find? Then you can agree from that side. Sometimes you have interns coming in. You need to cover them. You have people coming to do national service. All of these things sit with you as a learning department. So you must be able to have all of them captured, and then that can help you have a total budget. Okay. At the end of the day, how do you, let's say it's been approved for you and you're rolling it out. You must have individual development template that every employee would have completed for you. So if you want to, let's say, attend this program, you complete that to me. It goes through approval. And the approval, the head of department must sign off that particular form. And it goes through the same process so that why are we doing this? We are making sure that everyone along the chain is able to get their approval on this so that it doesn't get to have put all together and then is approved and you roll out the training. Then you can tell that in the course of the training, it doesn't also end there. You don't leave it for, let's say, external trainers to just, sometimes they issue their assessment and then it ends there. The learners must sign onto some sort of document. So you have, let's say, you acknowledge that I have attended, so attended this program and I have well understood the content and this and that, and I'm going to apply it on the job. So it becomes a commitment for the learner. End of the training that you're reporting. Running training without reporting is a no-no. So on a weekly basis, you are reporting on your learning interventions. There are a lot of training programs that goes on within the organization, but we fail as L&D professionals to record it. We talked about mentorship. We talked about skills transfer. When you have formally outlined paired people together and they are learning, you, the learning unit, must monitor. And how do you monitor? You visit them, you find out from them. So how is the learning going? And usually they will have their end date. Maybe this particular transfer is an end date by, let's say, 31st of, let's say, January, or maybe by March ending, it should be done. Once it's ended, you should find out from the learner. Are you sure that you have learned all of these things? Have you done this? Have you done that? You are asking questions. And once that has been done, that is an activity, it's a learning activity. So you record it. You record it as part of your activities for the year.
And as part of your activities, it goes into your monthly report. When you start capturing all these things in your monthly reporting, it tells management that yes, you're not just sitting there monitoring or scheduling people come, they go back to their department, and then you fold your arms. The next time you are coming for budgets and all of that, but you are reporting as they go along, and you are showing them the figures, the metrics, and all of that for them to see that this is indeed what is going on outside, and they've gone to learn. Like you rightly said, make sure that when they come back, you might not be able to send everyone outside. So you should be able to find a way that they can come back and transfer the knowledge. So yours is putting in measures, having the right template to be able to monitor all these processes. So if you go into an organization and you don't have any of these templates, then there are a checklist that you have to, there's a tall one that you need to list. Do you have this? You have this template? Do you have reporting this? You have to check all of that. If they don't have it, then you have to start developing all of them. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, you can ask around. That is why it is good to join platforms like SEDAT Consult, where you have like-minded people that you can call to support you. We are all there. Call to support you, where you can get valuable resources to use and then plan your interventions very well. When management sees, if you go for the money, they'll give it to you because they know that you're not just running the training, but you are reporting. And that is why when they go for meetings and they call you, okay, so learning and development, what have you done so far? Then you can, based on your tracking records that you make week every month, you can use that one as a metrics to show them to also know that you are also adding to the business. And so it's all part of it that can really help you to show what your worth is in the organization.
Great. Phyllis, thank you so much. That was very insightful. And Phyllis, thank you so much for the insights. Our participants here have testified to the fact that this has been very insightful. Zachary Salamati is very insightful. Thank you. Madam, I'm learning a lot. So, Phyllis, we've learned a lot. Thank you. Our dear participants, we also want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your weekend. We talk about work-life balance, and this should have been the weekend for you, spending some time with your family. But there is also the need for in this discussion. It has been so fruitful. We want to thank you for your time. Thank you so much to the HR Digest team, the technical evening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much for having me.